Hunting and gathering food. Nez Perce, Source 1. The Nez Perce hunted and gathered food in cycles with the seasons. They spent winters in permanent villages in the lower valleys where snows were seldom deep. Inside the fire-lit dwellings, children began to learn the tribe's ways. Women wove baskets and made animal skin clothes, moccasins, and bearskin robes. Men prepared their spears and arrows for fishing and hunting. They made strong bows with strips cut from the horns of mountain sheep. With the arrival of spring, each band began collecting enough food to sustain its members through the next winter. Men and boys caught salmon and other fish and eels with spears and nets or in traps made of brush and poles. From spring through fall, people in each village caught thousands of salmon. Women roasted the fish over fires to be eaten fresh. More fish were dried in the sun or smoked for storage. As the winter snows melted, the bands began leaving their permanent villages to hunt and to gather roots and berries in the higher country. The reed mats from the permanent dwellings were taken along for temporary shelter. The women carried digging sticks with sharp points and stone or bone handles. In favorite places, they dug for the roots of the cowse, which is a wild parsley plant. The roots were boiled or steamed into a mush that was patted into biscuit-like cakes to be eaten fresh or stored. In midsummer, the villagers sought the roots of the camas plant, which is a type of lily. Many bands gathered on prairies where the camas grew. Men and boys hunted or played games while women and girls dug the roots. The roots were cooked and pounded into cakes for storage. From summer through fall, huckleberries, blackberries, and wild strawberries were picked by the basketful. The berries were pressed into cakes and stored. The women also gathered leaves, bark, and fruit from other plants. The Nez Perce used these to heal wounds and cure common ailments, such as coughs and colds. The men and boys had favorite places to hunt for deer, elk, mountain sheep, and bear. Armed with spears, bows, and arrows, and disguised with animal skins from previous kills, the hunters stalked their prey. On other hunts, they formed long lines to encircle the animals. To catch smaller animals, such as rabbits and wolves, traps were set. Villagers feasted on the fresh cooked meat or dried it for storage. Source 2. What did the Nez Perce people eat before contact with white men? Within the deep canyons of the traditional Nimipu land, the people relied on the rivers, mountains, and prairies for sustenance. They practiced a seasonal subsistence cycle, living with the seasons, not by the month. In early spring, the women traveled to the lower valleys to dig root crops. The men traveled to the Snake and Columbia rivers to intercept the early salmon runs. The men still hunted, but much less during the salmon runs. In midsummer, all the people of the village moved to higher mountainous areas, setting up temporary camps to gather later root crops, fish the streams, and do more hunting of the big game. By late fall, the people settled back into their traditional villages along the Snake, Clearwater, and Salmon rivers. Salmon and other fish, game, dried roots, and berries provided winter foods for storage. However, hunting parties would travel to the hills and river bottoms where the deer and elk wintered. The basic roots gathered for winter storage include camas bulb, bitterroot, cowse, wild carrot, wild potato, and other root crops. Fruit collected included service berries, gooseberries, hawthorn berries, thornberries, huckleberries, currants, elderberries, choke cherries, blackberries, raspberries, and wild strawberries. Other food gathered includes pine nuts, sunflower seeds, and black moss. Large game animals that were hunted included deer, elk, moose, bear, black, brown, and grizzly, mountain sheep, and goats. After the introduction of the horse, the Nimipu men traveled to the Montana plains to hunt bison and antelope with the Flathead people. Even after bison was introduced into the Nimipu diet, deer and elk meat were still important foods for the winter storage. Small game was hunted when needed, included rabbit, squirrel, badgers, and marmot. Birds such as ducks, geese, ruffed grouse, and sage hens were also hunted.